And now we're going to move on to our main topic. So, which is about WooCommerce, and Andy will be presenting. And so our question here in Mentimeter is, what e-commerce integrations have you been using? So you can just throw in whatever. If you've been using any at all, you can throw those in. And WooCommerce, okay, good. Maybe taking a second. Amazon, Walmart, PHP, MySQL. Okay, we've got a lot of WooCommerce experience here so far. And now I would like to introduce Andy Knasinski. Please tell me if I mispronounced your name. Hopefully I got it right. And I did it okay?
You're good. Yep.
Good. And he is going to enlighten us on WooCommerce integration with FileMaker. So I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Kate. So we'll just start with a little bit about me. Corporate IT, I worked in publishing for a number of years, went to an independent developer, a FileMaker for, 30 years now, right? Forever. I got 2 dogs, 4 cats, and this is updated from the last time. 4 chickens, hedgehog, but it's a different hedgehog. In my spare time, I do these Go Ruck events. We go around with heavy backpacks, we carry awkward objects, and it's a lot of fun. So about NRG, right? We've been doing shipping stuff for 15 years, so it's our primary focus here. We do single and multi-carrier solutions. Our customers range in volume from 10 to thousands per day. We've got under about 1,000 customers around the whole world. So our whole deal is everything we do is carrier certified. So we work with UPS, FedEx, the Post Office, DHL, and all these other ones, and then a bunch of freight carriers. And since we have the relationships with the carriers, we can often get customers carrier subsidies to cover a lot of the cost, which is kind of nice. And then our solutions run on Mac, Windows, iOS, WebDirect, and things like that. And one of the great things about our stuff is obviously it's built in FileMaker, right? So you have the ability to customize it to your workflow and do a lot of things that you're not going to get with software as a service providers. We work with all the carrier supplied printers and scales and stuff. You just plug it into your Mac or PC, whatever, and it just works. Our solutions also have integrations built into them with a lot of different e-commerce providers. So we've worked with Shopify, BigCommerce, Amazon, everything, right? WooCommerce, dozens of e-commerce stuff that we've implemented over the years into our solutions. So it's all in there. So we're going to talk about WooCommerce today, right? So why use WooCommerce really? It's built on WordPress, right? So 60% of CMS market share is done in WordPress. 800 million websites, lots, right? And it's free. You can't beat free. You've seen a lot of things like with Shopify and stuff like that, where they are increasing rates or reducing features and things like that, or you have to pay a lot more. So free is always great. And a novice can easily manage WordPress. So it's super easy to go in there and manage products, go through your orders and do things in the Woo interface without having to use other solutions. And then it's so easy to customize with additional plugins. So there's just like thousands of plugins for WordPress and WooCommerce to have it do whatever you want it to do without having to have somebody do custom programming for it. So we're going to talk about WooCommerce and integration with FileMaker, right? And we often come into it when we've got a customer that maybe they have an existing Woo site. Obviously, they've got existing FileMaker stuff, and you've got to sync these things. So it's always kind of a mess in getting started. So you got to figure out what's correct, especially with customers and then products and orders is easy. You're just going to download the orders, but customers and products get to be kind of a mess at times. So the first thing you're going to do if you're doing a WooCommerce integration is you're going to go out and you're going to get API keys. So this is a little different from a lot of other APIs where you're going to do like an OAuth kind of thing. For WooCommerce, you're just going to go into it and we're going to go into the REST API. And from here, we could just add a new key. And it's always nice to create specific keys for each different use. So we could go in there and do that. And we set the permissions based on a user. And we generate our keys and we're done. So we're going to grab those two values and use those either if we were using Claris Connect or FileMaker Direct. And then one of the other things we really like to do when we're working with customers is we've got a set of recommended plugins. So we like to install WooCommerce shipment tracking, which allows us to add tracking numbers back to an order. There's a lot of things WooCommerce doesn't have in it that it really probably should have by default, but tracking numbers is one of those things. We like to do custom order status so that you can change the status values instead of what's all fixed in there. And then often you're going to want to have some sort of rating for shipping. Maybe you're offering free shipping, but you want to have some premium options in there. So it's great to have those shipping modules in there to do that. And then one of the alternatives that not really going to talk about in here is the FM e-commerce link WooCommerce edition. So it's a FileMaker set that implements all of the Woo APIs. And it's really great to use and to see like what all the data is and how it's mapped to FileMaker. And it's a really nice thing to check out instead of doing this all on your own. So I looked at Claris Connect with WooCommerce. And when we go into Claris Connect, it's got a really nice library of functions for WooCommerce. But when we look at providers and things like that, if we were going to build a flow, Claris Connect really doesn't work with a lot of other e-commerce systems. Shopify's in there, but it's deprecated. And other than that, it really is WooCommerce. So I went in and I created a simple flow. And we could have something pretty advanced in here too, where FileMaker would get notified when customers are added or deleted or things like that. A lot of that really doesn't make sense. What really does is when an order is created. So I created a simple flow that when an order is created in WooCommerce, it's going to go out and it's going to create a record in FileMaker. So it's loading up my layout details here. And then essentially in Claris Connect, all I had to do was map my different fields. So I've got my billing information, email, city, state, address, all that kind of stuff. I don't have the products in here. And then the status of the order. And then what I do is I always set all of the JSON data into like a debug field so that I could do some additional things with it later. That's basically it. So every time an order would come into WooCommerce, it would automatically create the record in FileMaker without having to deal with webhooks or running any server scripts to get those orders. So that's pretty neat. But we'll look here at the actual WooCommerce REST API. So when I start doing an integration, often I'll start with some custom functions that I'll drop in. I like these ones with the gold prefix and JSON from Soliant. And then I'll go in and I'll add some fields into all the tables that I'm integrating with to store the Woo ID and then that debug data. So if we look at my demo file here, I threw in my URL, the key, the secret, and then I've got a button in here that just tests it to make sure that it's actually able to connect, which is a great starting point. So from there, and this is the FileMaker invoice sample, which is super basic. And then I went in here and added a couple fields. So the Woo ID, a Woo status, a customer ID. In customers, I did kind of the same thing. I've got a debug field and the customer ID. And in products, I've got the ID and then the debug too. So that's really all that I added in there. And then I just get started with some base scripts. And we can see here kind of what they are. So we've got get a Woo ID for a customer. So often you've got your FileMaker database, which is going to have a bunch of customers in it already, and you really want to kind of tie the Woo customer to the FileMaker customer. So this would go out and it will grab the Woo ID based on the email address here. So we've got the field Woo ID. We can run that. And of course, that one was a bad one. And I broke something. Well, that's a mess. But basically, we run out and we do a query based on the email address that's in there. We do a GET request for it. We check for an error, and then we grab the Woo customer ID, and that gets dropped back into here. And again, the key really is the email address field in there. So we always have customers go through and try to dedupe their database and things like that ahead of time to make sure that those are all unique. And then we would just loop script to link those together. And then sometimes we'll have a button where we could disable a user from FileMaker or things like that. But often customers are just going to come from Woo with new orders and just get created. And then we've got products. So again, products, generally you've got all of your stuff in FileMaker. The fields between Woo and FileMaker are often really different. Woo has categories and variations and things like that. So what I find really useful is to either map based on a SKU where you've got a common value between the two. So I've got a script in here to get the Woo ID for a product. And then I've also got another one in here to just grab all of my Woo products. So this one here just grabs the ID based on that matching SKU and sets it. And then if we ran get all Woo products, it's just going to grab everything and it's going to create new records. So we'll run that. So it goes out, pulls the item, the SKU, the description, the price information. We set our ID. Here's the debug that has maybe more information that we want to parse out. And then from here, we could go back and we could update the Woo record, right? So if we decided we wanted to go in and change the name to include Ethernet, and we can pull up our Woo products here. So we've got the 450 with the Ethernet, and then let's go to that other one. And we can run update Woo. It's going to go out. It'll change our description, the item, the SKU value, the price, and then we could also take our stock quantities too and send that across. And then the next thing we have is grabbing Woo orders. So that just goes out and it's going to grab a list of all of the orders meeting a particular status. And it'll create the line items and all of the customer information for that. So we can go in here and we can see that it set our billing and shipping address, our item information, it set the subtotal, taxes and things like that. It grabbed the Woo status information from here. And then the additional debug, and then we've got our Woo ID number in here. And then I've got 2 additional scripts in here, so we could go back 3, update the Woo status, add some notes, add tracking information. So we could change our status to completed if we wanted. We can go in and add a note. And here's the note that we just created. And then we could change our status to completed. And we can see here our status was changed. That can also send out a notification to the customer to say that it was completed. And then the other thing we can do is add the tracking information. So in this sample file too, I have the ability to go out and get some rates. So I'm just going to change this to be 5 pounds. And I've got it set to UPS ground there. And now we could ship it. Oh, the state's well, if it shipped and we had a tracking number, we can go back and add the tracking number. And if we reload our order here, it'll show on the order list. It'll show our tracking number. Oh, there was the tracking number right there. And again, that can get set to the customer, sent to the customer too. And that's pretty much it. So that's the base set of scripts that we would do. And then we would tweak out a lot of these things with getting the products and customers and updating them to set the fields that the customer really needed, because there's just so much in the Woo setup to be done. And then the last thing we'll do too is, if we weren't using Claris Connect, we would set up a script to run and get all orders. Perhaps that would run every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes, and it would then just download those orders into the system. And the other thing to look at with that is, again, we're pulling back processed orders. So what we can do is, after we download it, we could change the status to downloaded in an order so that it wouldn't download again, or depending on the customer too, sometimes they want different logic, that if an order already existed, we would delete it and re-download it, or maybe we just ignore it if the record already was created in FileMaker. So does anybody have any questions?
So when you use those plugins with WooCommerce that add the tracking number, so you're saying like that, then you can access those fields too, that the plugin, you can
exactly, yep,
using the API.
Yeah, so the plugin will often expose some additional API parameters for those.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's really interesting. One more question I had was, when you were showing Claris Connect, you were showing us the triggers, right? Those were the Claris Connect triggers for WooCommerce?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Are the actions, how many actions are there?
There's a lot of actions in there. So if we went back and we looked at Woo, right? So the actions is what was in there. So the triggers were the the other things, right? So if FileMaker updated something, then we could send out the data. But honestly, I don't find much value in doing any of that.
And let's see, Jake had a question. Do you have any webhook examples? Can you set up webhooks in WooCommerce?
You could. So to do a webhook with WooCommerce, you'd have to install like some sort of PHP thing or something on the outside of your FileMaker server that would get the webhook data, and then using the data API, create that record.
And how do you set up the webhooks in WooCommerce?
So in WooCommerce, in the settings, so you can set up different things in here. So we can actually see right here that Claris Connect added these 2 webhooks in Woo, right? Called stamp play, because that's where it came from. But we could go in there and we could add our own webhook to say when an order is created, go out and send the data to this URL.
Right. Oh, cool. That's kind of interesting to see. Yeah, what Claris, I mean, there you get the evidence.
Yeah.
Claris Connect is doing behind the scenes.
For sure.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Any more questions for Andy? Anybody?
Sure. Have you had a chance to extensively, it sounds like you had a chance to extensively look at the API. Typically what we find with connectors is that what we have is a subset of API capabilities in Claris Connect. I'm just wondering, do you feel like this connector is pretty complete?
No, I would agree. I think the connectors in Connect are slightly limited in the functionality, right? Because it's just, basic stuff. When you get into anything advanced, especially if you were going to go into creating really detailed products or things like that, I think Connect would fail.
Thank you.
Even, like in the flow that I've got with creating an order, the assumption here is we're on our invoice layout, right? Invoice detail, and we're going to get the line items from that order, and we'd have to go in here and then, grab the items out of the JSON and then create some complex flow in here to parse out those line items individually. Maybe if you had a simple single product type order thing, then this would work great.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, you'd have to have a loop in there or
Yep.
a repeat. What do they call it in Claris Connect? A repeat. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you'd have to have a repeat in there to build out the line items. But
Mhm.
normally what I would do then to get around that again is I'm just going to take that whole JSON chunk that they provided, I'm going to put it into a field in the database, and then you could just have a FileMaker script that's going to go out and grab that JSON and parse it, and it's probably a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I use the execute script action in Claris Connect, right? When it's like, oh, I don't want to write all these steps in Claris Connect. I just want to push it over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's really awesome. Yeah, I didn't realize WooCommerce was free for some reason. So, yeah.
It's some of the plugins have cost. So like the shipment tracking, I think it's maybe $50, $75 or something like that for a year. And like the shipping rates are kind of the same thing. They're pretty cheap.
Yeah. It's pretty powerful connections though there. Any more questions for Andy at this point? Andy, you want to add anything else?
No, I'll fix my issues in the demo file and I'll throw that up on the meetup site then too.
It's always the demo gods, once you
yeah,
live, it's gonna happen. Okay, cool. Well, yeah, this is really interesting, and hang on because we'll do our breakout sessions, and if there's anybody else that wants to ask questions, we'll we'll do that. So thank you.